Civilization 7's first significant fix-it patch update just dropped, the first in a series of promised upcoming updates that address player feedback. But what if Firaxis actually fixed? Well, this patch rolling out during that advanced access period touches on 3 problematic areas: the gameplay, the AI, the artificial intelligence you play against, as well as the UI, the user interface. So with timecards down below, let me share with you the changes and fixes that arrived in Civilization 7 today. First up, 2 changes in the patch notes to do with the ages. One of them is about pacing. Epic and marathon speed games, those of you who like to play long Civ campaigns, well, they used to be shorter than Firaxis had intended, so they've fixed that. Nice to hear. They've also changed the way that city-states work as you move through the ages. City-states will now turn into friendly, independent powers on that age transition, instead of what they used to do, which was just disappear completely. And when they start those new ages, exploration and modern, they'll also have more units, so they'll be noticeably stronger, hopefully, as we move through. Next, there are 4 improvements, all about boats. They've aimed to, it would seem, fix inconsistencies, quote-unquote, with naval combat. So, naval units will now use the correct combat strength when attacking other naval units all of the time. They'll also properly take reciprocal damage, that fire when they are firing on an enemy, that returned fire when they attack another unit. And finally, naval units will more consistently move into that attacked tile after they defeat another unit. Up until now, their movements have been a bit sketchy, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. Sometimes the icon moves with or without them. Not a game breaker, but for consistency and polish, it's nice to see this being tidied up. Next, something that seems like a small point, but is actually massive. One of the biggest pieces of emerging feedback I've heard is, I want the game to carry on. Or actually, more importantly, my game's just ending too soon. It's not even the one more turn thing, it's just, I can't even get to my goal. Well, completing the final milestone of a legacy path no longer adds age progress in the modern age. This will help ensure that you have more time to actually complete a victory. Now, of course, that final step in the legacy path process tends to add the most age progress, so it speeds through the age. Of course, not just true for you, but also all of your opponents, even the AI. And so to have that turned off means that the age will now extend naturally instead of having to enter your way through extending it by not researching future research. A good small step to extend that modern age. On the topic of that future research, just slightly lower down, the future culture research, the future civic, is now repeatable in all ages. And the cost of both future tech and civic will increase more when it's repeated, something I would have assumed it was already doing anyway. Good to hear that. The next 2 points on our gameplay Windows PC patch notes list are about towns. The first one, less funny than the second. Towns will now switch back to their focus of growing, the default focus, automatically if they're no longer eligible for their chosen focus. So if your population decreases below that, I believe, 7 pop threshold. Secondly, an exploit, bug, a hilarious one at that was fixed. An issue where after too many bonuses to growth were added, food needed to grow the next population, the next growth event, became negative, essentially meaning grow forever. Heard and seen some very funny stories about that one. Wasn't able to use it myself, now it's fixed. Next up, some vaguely described improvements to rail networks. The aim, however, is more clearly articulated. The aim was to increase the reliability, of settlements connecting to the rail network over water by building ports. If you don't know how this works, basically, you need your rail networks online to connect your settlements by rail. What happens if water's in the way? Well, you need a port as well. They say this should apply as long as the capital either has a port or is connected by rail to a settlement with a port. Long story short, hopefully those modern age connections are working a little bit better now. And before we move on to some improvements to the AI, hallelujah, one point on that loyalty crisis, that one around happiness in the Antiquity Age. Maybe you lose a settlement and gain a settlement. Well, Firaxis say they've made improvements to this crisis. This includes giving the ability to purchase villas in towns during the crisis, right? A happiness building, giving us another way to manage happiness of our settlements. Of course, if towns were revolting, you mightn't be able to do this. Nice to have that direct purchase option. Hopefully you've got lots of cash money in your back pocket because money really is king in this game. They conclude this section by adding a little note on crossplay multiplayer. I think because of things like verification and approvals, these patches tend to arrive on PC first. It's easier that way, it would seem. And as a result, you can't do crossplay because console isn't running currently the same version that PC is. You can still do console to console, you just can't do console to PC. Not yet. Gotta wait for them to get the patch as well. Welcome now to Chapter 2. Perhaps getting a little juicier here. We have some detail around what they're changing with the AI. Like the UI, which will be our final section, the AI has come under fire, as it always has throughout Civilization's history. What have they changed? First and foremost, the AI will now offer high-value cities less often during peace deals. It'll be harder to fleece the AI out of a fantastic city. Second and thirdly, in the modern age, the AI will now declare war less often right at the beginning of the age, and it will also consider ideology more before declaring a war or offering peace. The final 3 points on AI for this update are about other leaders' desires. They will now have a decreased desire for war if neither party has an ideology. They'll have an increased desire. They'll want to fight with players of a different ideology. And finally, they'll have less of a desire for peace if you have the opposite. Long story short, if their ideology is different to yours, they're going to want to fight you more. And finally, welcome to Chapter 3. Here we're going to talk about the UI changes. Obviously, a lot of these are fixes. It's not a complete overhaul, a complete reiteration of the UI. Here they are. You can see them all on your screen. Some of them are fairly minor, or just may not impact you at all, like the first one, replacing the simplified Chinese font with the font used in Civ 6 while they work on additional improvements. You're either really stoked about that, or you're the vast majority of people who it doesn't affect. Some of the highlights through this, from me, the things that I ran into, they've fixed an issue where the settlement menu failed to open when clicking on a non-player's settlement. They've added a notification for completed espionage actions. Your current religion is now, quite logically, displayed as the first in the belief picker tab, so it doesn't just open up on someone else's religion and you're like, wait, I can't add a belief, what's going on? Oh, it's not my religion. And finally, a notable one for me right at the bottom. They've improved the spacing between the Civ descriptions, units, building icons, etc. on the loading screen. This one, obviously, not going to wake up in the morning and do a little dance to celebrate, but it indicates, I think, a step in the right direction and an acknowledgement that, hey, you know, some of this stuff really does need a glow up. So nice to see that getting some improvement and realignment, as well as some more general fixes to the UI. There was also one note about a camera issue. They fixed an issue on non-native resolutions where the camera would focus on the lower end of the map when clicking on the minimap. So if that was an issue for you, hey, don't worry, that's been fixed too. Overall, this update seems to have gathered a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? Relatively quick and easy fixes for Civilization 7. The Modern Age extension by removing the age progress, just one small example of some things that I really liked in this patch update. Thankfully, they've signaled that there will be more on the way, the promise of larger, more substantive updates to follow this one, building on to this version of the game, 1.0.1. And all of this matters, as I'm guessing this will probably be the release version of Civ 7. And that brings us to the end of this very quick Civilization 7 patch update video. I've got more Civ 7 to come. I'm working on a couple of videos. The devs are going to be doing some sort of Q&A. I'll be very interested to see what they have to say tomorrow, so I'll probably follow that and make a video about that too. So, thank you very much for being here. The Civilization 7 fun continues. I'll see you next time.